So get your thinking caps on. Any questions that you want to ask, if you just ask the question and then we'll work out who's best to answer. Unless you want to ask a particular person a question, and yeah, so over to you. Should we answer this question first, yeah? So the question was, you do messy church, how do you get people from messy church into being interested in the faith, etc.? Was that it?
The parents.
Oh, the parents.
Come in a messy church, how to then reach the parents?
Oh, okay, so we do messy church. We have a policy that anyone who is under 16, I think it is it 16, has to come with a responsible adult. They're not allowed to come otherwise, so we don't just have children coming. We do make messy church, you know, I said we're pretty skint as a church. A lot of our money goes into outreach and messy church, that kind of thing. So we do a really good programme, so kids really want to come. I think they do anyway.
They nag their mums.
They do, yeah. And so for us, that's how we do it. They can't come without their parents. The other thing that we do, which isn't what you normally do at messy church, is we send all the children out while we do a gospel message. That does mean, which we've just sort of been hitting onto, that we can get potentially bid for secular money for a lot of the stuff that we do, because we send the children out, so they're not getting evangelised, it's the adults that get evangelised. So there's just something to be aware of there. Anyway, any other questions?
Why don't you want the children evangelized?
Well, pretty much. Firstly, there is no way that we could communicate in any meaningful way with the bunch of people that we have. With the children, and it's pretty much chaos. When they go out, it is hushed, pretty much hushed silence. Like they settle. It takes a little while to settle down, but it's quiet and they listen. We would never get that. So we want to meaningfully communicate the gospel. And anyway, if we win the parents, we win the children. There's a lot more rather than the other way around. So, so we do want to. Most of the children come to the clubs that we do and various other things as well. Anyway, so where we always have a gospel message. Anyone else want to say anything about that?
So of course, when you're doing stuff like messy clubs or kids clubs or mums and tots. If you're not careful, you put in all of your energy and all your kind of thought into the activity to make it quality, and it is worth having a quality activity. But we'll always at London City Mission, most of our different things will do that kind of stuff. But we'll have a prayer time before, and where the people we're praying for it's normally mums who come along. You get one or two dads, but it's normally the mums, and we're praying for the mums. We're thinking, right. And then the helpers are like thinking, right, who's following up on this mum, who's following up on this mum, and kind of targeting mums to think, right, who's befriending that mum. And it's not just at Messy Church, it's making meaningful friendships, unconditional friendship, not like, oh, I'll only become your friend if you come to a Bible study, but like, can I just be your friend? Can we swap mobile phone numbers or WhatsApp or whatever, so we can follow up on each other? And that, don't leave the mums at the back of the room while you're concentrating on the kids. The mums are the main event.
Just one other thing to say about what Graham was saying about resources going into all the activities. In our church, we've got a great team of people like George, Stacey, Gemma and Jake when she was with us and various others. They do all the work. I just concentrate really on a message, so we don't, that it doesn't get compromised. Okay, have we got any other questions? Yes, lady.
I have got a question, but I've also got a quick little comment on that previous question.
Okay, well if you make your way up the front, and we'll take the other question while you're coming up. Does someone else have a question?
It's not related to what we've just been talking about.
That's right.
That's right.
Okay. So particularly for Simon, I guess, but I think it's a theme that I've heard from a number of you and reading the Testaments. You talked about I don't know if you used this exact word, but it sounded like you were talking about discipling people to conversion. So really turning on its head the idea that people are converted and then they're disciples. You're saying that actually you're discipling people to a point of conversion, which of course is something that's emphasised in church planting movements in Islamic societies at the moment, and had a huge impact. I just want to hear a little bit more on whether I understood that correctly and whether that's an approach that's sort of recognised now. Or,
okay, so Simon, we'll come to that in a moment then, because as that's a change of tack. So do you want to just come and say your bit, and then we'll come to that. Thank you. Your name?
My name is Felicity, and we don't do messy church where we are, but something that's worked quite well, if maybe you're strapped for cash, is that we invite people to parties, and we ask every family that's coming to bring a plate of something to share. They have to come. If they haven't got any money, I just say, what have you got in your cupboard? Have you got some bin liners? Have you got some squash? And they have to bring something. And then at the end of each party, we put out all the food and we all eat together, which is just a way of building perhaps relationships, but also means that you're not having to provide all the food because everyone comes with the food. And then the other things that we have done is we've done where the kids act out a play. It's complete chaos, but whatever the story is, they act out. And I don't know if anyone gets it, but it means the parents kind of watch and are quiet because they're seeing their kids acting out like, where's Jesus gone? He's gone from the dead, and it's all a bit mad. But that can work to get maybe parents listening perhaps to the story, and the kids just love acting and dressing up. And then another thing we've only just done the first time this year is at Easter time we did a mystery quiz, a mystery trail. So it was like a whodunit, and they went around the estate and met like a Roman centurion. He gave his version of what happened, and then they met Mary, she gave her version. But it meant that they had to be accompanied by the families, so they all kind of encountered the story and then had to work out the clues, what really happened. And then to get the certificate, they had to tell me what happened to Jesus on Easter Day, otherwise we wouldn't get a certificate and a prize. And but that was the way, and for the little ones, they just went and got Easter eggs and spotted stuff. But I think one of the things we're learning is that some of the older kids who I thought would take a more kind of trail where they have to write the answers, some of them really struggled with that. So we're about to do a Follow the Star event this year, which is where they're going to be wise men and they've got to find Jesus. But we're going to do like a middle one, which is multiple choice for kids that perhaps don't like writing so much. But also with that means that we can do games as well for more active kids, as well as crafts like the Messy Church do. So it's a bit different, but I didn't know if that gives any ideas. If you want anything more about the Trump hunts, come to us because we've done one, so we can just email you all the stuff.
That's brilliant, thank you. Simon. Thank you.
Who is us?
Yeah, who is us?
Well, just get our email or whatever, that's probably the easiest.
Who are you then?
We're Grace Church in Bromsgrove.
Grace Church in Bromsgrove.
Right.
Bromsgrove.
The Midlands.
Yeah, the Midlands.
So this is to do with conversion and discipleship. It is interesting, isn't it? You go to sort of good Christian resources places, and you have a sort of a bunch of books that go Christianity Explored or Alpha or something like that, brings you to conversion, and then the resource is called discipleship. And it seems to me that we just did some work on this actually a few weeks ago, and it seems to me that word, we don't want to get cranky about it, but strictly speaking, there isn't a thing called discipleship as far as I understand it. You don't disciple someone, you make a disciple of Jesus. And the whole process from beginning, encountering an unbeliever and telling them the gospel, and whatever happens beyond that is all part of making a disciple of Jesus. So I think the Urban Catechism, therefore, is starting wherever you're at, whether that's no knowledge or some knowledge, no belief or some belief, and making a disciple of Jesus with God's truth. Does that answer the...
Everyone, you ought to speak on this.
Right? Should I?
Yeah. Because you do this in your church, don't you?
Maybe I shouldn't speak.
There must be another Ephraim in there. What you mean, the catechism?
No, you've got your own discipleship program. Isn't that right?
We have had, yeah. So I think for me, Simon kind of put it in a nutshell, really. It's starting with people where they're at and helping them on the process. And the sort of pre-conversion, post-conversion can become a bit confusing, especially when you've got people who have had some exposure to the Bible, but they think they're Christians, and they will present themselves as being that, and you kind of realize that actually this is just a notional thing for them, and there's not really been a heart change, or you suspect that might be the case. And so just to take it through the same process. And the catechism has been very helpful for that, in terms of it being accessible to people who are unchurched, unfamiliar with the Bible, who are new to the faith, or who have been a Christian for a couple of years and need to be strengthened in their relationship with the Lord. It really is a useful resource in that sense.
I would just add that our experience has been that the idea that you can bring someone onto a 5 or 6 part course, or 6 or 7 part course that explains the gospel, and expect them at the end to make a decision is unusual and not always helpful. The much longer process, which gets into the nitty-gritty detail of my worldview and who I am and who God is and so on and so forth, over a long period of time, is much more helpful.
We've got any more questions? We've got another 5 minutes for questions, so over the back there.
Probably for Simon. When a church has been planted and is impacting the local community, what role do the alien have in serving that state in the longer term?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, sure. So when a church has been planted and is impacting the local community, what role do the aliens have in impacting that state community longer term?
Yeah.
So you're saying the foreigners and aliens.
Okay, so you have someone from outside of that culture coming in to plant a church, and sometime down the line, what roles they have.
Yeah, and others who are coming in to serve that area, but they're not native to that area.
Okay.
Have you got an immediate answer? I've got an immediate answer that will give you a chance to talk. Because what's nice is that overseas missionaries have been thinking about this for a long, long time. And what's weird is that, I came back from China, and there are all these urban mission people, and I'm like, wow, you're just starting to get to grips with these ideas about indigenous church and cross-cultural church and cross-cultural church planters. This is stuff that John Venn was talking about self-supporting churches 200 years ago and stuff. But anyway, but it's understanding that. Sorry, I don't. But but it's understanding.
I was around then.
But it's understanding that we know that when you go across to China, that is proper cross-cultural work, isn't it? But of course, when Simon and I go down to Dagenham, we think, well, that's not cross-cultural work, because we're all English and we're just going to another part of England. So all we need to do is preach Christ crucified, because the Bible's all we need. Are you really thinking the Bible's not sufficient? In the Bible's all there in Christianity Explored. So as long as you do the six-part course. So, as a missionary in China, what part did I see for myself? Well, of course, I wasn't there in China trying to plant Church of England churches, even though I was going out with the Church of England mission agency. I was there serving the local church, and I very much saw myself as the servant of the local church, and I looked for ways to serve the local church and serve the indigenous leadership. So it's funny, there were different mission agencies. So some mission agencies that will remain nameless, but some of them are American, that come from the deep south, would kind of turn up and think, you must do things this way, and we have this, and we're going to try and plant our denomination there. And then there's other groups that think, right, we're just going to get on, and we'll work with all different kinds of people. So I would be working, although I came from a relatively conservative background, I'd work with charismatics and different churches and think, right, what are the things that I can do to help out, and really as Simon said, sometimes just being in the room is difficult because people look to you as the leader. And so in China I was working with returnees, people who'd become Christians overseas, and I was training them up to serve the local church. And I think middle class people can serve a local estate, but we should see ourselves as servants. That is really, really important. So not go in with a patronising attitude. We must go in thinking, what on earth can I do to serve this local attitude, as opposed this local group, as opposed to thinking, oh, these people have so much to learn, it's just so much, oh goodness, miles behind where we were in Wimbledon or wherever, that's where I came from. So come with a servant attitude and think, what can I do to help? That is the most important thing. And train up local leaders. So at London City Mission, we've replaced a lot of the stuff that we did in our gap year programme with a gap year kind of thing for local people of the estates, because that's something I learned in China. I wasn't training up English people from Oxbridge, I was training up Chinese people to lead Chinese churches. So if I'm in council estates, I shouldn't be training up people from Oxbridge, I should be training up people from council estates. And that mentality, let's train up local people and let them go, and let's be servants.
I don't have anything particular to add to that, except I didn't quite finish our thinking with Pete Leach and things, and it's something like this. It's not completely thought through, but the ideal is that, of course, the church becomes completely indigenous, and folks from outside don't need to be there anymore, and probably shouldn't be, if their influence is going to be negative. However, with the Pete Leach thing, I guess another aspect is this: is that churches need resourcing in one way or another. So it would be possible in the future, once Phil and the others have established themselves as the indigenous leaders of, let's say, that youth work, to have someone come in from outside to serve, but they won't have an overbearing influence on the work there. The advantage of that would be if there are, as we've seen on the map, if there's a need for whoever's willing to go in with the gospel into these areas, a really good way to train up a middle class person on how to do an outsider coming in mission is to go to an urban church, but to come in that role as the servant, learning from indigenous people, not from just coming in parachuting in cold. So. Yeah.
Okay, thank you guys. We've come to the end of our...
Tim.
Oh, Tim. Sorry, Tim, go on.
Just a quick one. Thank you all for your ministry today. I really appreciate it. Just wanted to pick up quickly on something that Graham said, and talking about the relative chances of somebody from a working class background versus somebody from a university background hearing the gospel. And that's a countrywide issue. I think we're particularly blessed in London. Christian immigration has greatly helped you here. That's not so true with the rest of the country. So just wondering here about yourselves as reaching and other pastors in the room here. Do you think there's things that can be done structurally, as it were, in the bigger organisations about advocating for a redressing of that balance? Clearly there's a bias, there's an imbalance. How can that change? Obviously with prayer, but practically as well, what other things can be done?
Okay, that's a big question. So maybe there's some resources that you can point people to, and maybe a quick answer. And if anyone else has got a quick answer, that'd be great.
If you can repeat the question for us.
Yeah. So we said statistically it seems really challenging that working class people have got a really much lower chance of becoming a Christian than middle class people, and that seems like a structural thing, and working class people will find it much harder to become a Christian leader. So it seems systemic. And what could we do as leaders? What could we do as reaching the unreached? What could we do in the church to redress that balance? And of course, what praise the Lord, one thing that has started to happen, and Simon mentioned this, is that in terms of training, it used to be that if you wanted to be a church leader, you really need to go to Bible college or something like that. And if you want to be like a conservative evangelical, you should go to a place like Oak Hill or Wycliffe or something. And like to get something like that, you need at least a degree, but probably a really good degree from a top-notch university. And so if you think of the ladder of getting there, it's like there's a ladder and the bottom 12 rungs have been knocked out, and you just think, how on earth am I ever going to get up there? And some of these courses, like Duncan's Urban Mission Pioneers, like the London City Mission Pioneers scheme, Urban Mission Programme, Urban Ministry Programme, get it right, Graham. UMP, just call it UMP. Like the UMP Programme, Urban Ministry Programme, the Pioneers Programme. There are now ways that people can start getting on the ladder, so that is good. Interestingly, the Evangelical Alliance have been struggling with issues like this, that for like decades there weren't black people on the Evangelical Alliance Council, and they've like just addressed it and thought, we must do something about that. Structurally it is just not right. And then as they did it, we just relaunched the council with more black people on, and straight away I gave a very similar talk to the one I gave today, and several people put their hands on their face and said, oh my goodness, there are now black people, white people and Asian people, and we've got men and women on the council, and we've got no working class people. Oh my goodness, that is the next issue that we need to address, because it is an enormous blind spot in the church, across, not only in the conservative parts of the churches, but across the boundaries. Praise the Lord, there are some training programs.
And you mentioned structurally what can be done. I think one, recognizing the issue. For some people, it's not an issue that they recognize to be an issue, and so that's a problem in itself. It's a bit like AAU, the first thing, hello, my name's Ephraim and I'm an alcoholic. Then we're going to get moving, you know what I mean? So recognizing, I think secondly, investing. And so this is something that's really blessed me about my involvement with London City Mission. A few years back, we had a conversation about partnership and what that might look like to see people on estates reached and trained up to reach people on estates. And so uniquely and unusually, rather than offer a training program that people have to pay to get on, they said we will provide support through our fundraising capacity to actually sponsor people to be trained. And that made a huge difference in being able to see people access training that was going to then help them to be effective in their local church and reaching out. So there was a commitment there to invest and of the resources that the Lord had provided and blessed them with. And so I think there's that, and trust. I think that there can be an underlying distrust that you're not on our level, you're not from our background, so there's only so much we can really entrust to you. And so I think just trusting God, fundamentally. I don't trust myself, I'm a sinner, so I'm not asking people to trust me or to trust anyone. We trust the Lord that He's doing the work in someone by His Spirit, and we trust that He's going to continue that work and see it through. And we can, as we see them grow, give responsibility and trust that the Lord's going to help them.
Can I just finish that point there? I agree with everything that's been said, and I've seen in the United States a similar issue, and people trying to advocate for minorities in the church, and I've come to a conclusion that as well as making people aware of the imbalance, as well as making people aware of how our British class culture has impacted the church and has hindered gospel ministry, as well as that, I think fundamentally we have to be more Christ-centered and therefore more gospel-centered, because the conversations are too hard to have if we're not going into these conversations with a deep sense of Christ's righteousness, because otherwise the defenses come up and no one wants to admit there's a problem, or people want to just, you know, blame and get payback and whatnot. And so I just think whether we're talking about racial reconciliation, whether we're talking about class reconciliation, or inequality in the church, or whatever we're talking about, I think we must have these conversations. But we have to be so Christ-centered and gospel-centered as we have the conversation, because I think that's the biggest block. I don't think the class thing is the biggest block. I think the biggest block is we're not Christ-centered enough, which means we're not freed up to talk properly about the class thing and the race thing.
Thank you, guys. It's been really well served, and really appreciate it. We're going to come to. We've got to.